Last night, viewers witnessed the unthinkable on The Late Show as host Stephen Colbert's interview with Matt Damon spiraled into a heated exchange of words and accusations. What started as a promotional appearance quickly devolved into one of television's most uncomfortable moments, leaving audiences stunned and social media ablaze. The studio lights seemed unusually harsh that evening as Stephen Colbert welcomed Matt Damon to the stage. The actor, promoting his latest film, Arctic Horizon, walked out with his characteristic easy smile, waving to the enthusiastic audience. They had no idea what was about to unfold. "Matt Damon, everybody," Colbert announced with his signature enthusiasm, though keen observers might have noticed something different in his tone, a slight edge that hadn't been there before. The two men exchanged a brief handshake, noticeably lacking the usual warmth of Colbert's celebrity greetings. "Thanks for having me, Stephen," Damon said as he settled into the guest chair. Of course," Colbert replied, shuffling his note cards. "So, Arctic Horizon, another movie where you need to be rescued at great expense?" The audience laughed, but Damon's smile tightened slightly. It wasn't the first time someone had made a joke referencing his roles in films like The Martian and Saving Private Ryan, but Colbert's delivery lacked the good-natured ribbing that usually accompanied such quips. "Well, actually, in this one I'm the rescuer," Damon responded good-naturedly. "I play a glaciologist who—" "A glaciologist?" Colbert interrupted, his tone mockingly incredulous. "Come on, Matt. Don't you think you're a bit old to be playing the hero now? You're what, pushing 55? The audience's reaction was mixed. Uncomfortable laughter mingled with a few gasps. Damon, ever the professional, tried to laugh it off. "I'm 53, but hey, who's counting? And, there are plenty of scientists working in the field at my age and older. The character is actually based on—" Right, Colbert cut in again, waving his hand dismissively. "I just find it interesting that Hollywood keeps casting you as this intellectual savior type when we all know you dropped out of Harvard. Kind of ironic, isn't it?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. The audience fell silent. This wasn't the playful banter they were accustomed to. This felt personal and unnecessarily cruel. Damon's expression hardened, but he maintained his composure. "I was actually at Harvard for nearly 4 years before I left to pursue acting. But more importantly, I'm an actor playing a role. That's literally my job, Stephen." Of course," Colbert said with a dismissive wave. "You're very good at pretending to be things you're not. Speaking of which, I wanted to ask you about your friendship with Ben Affleck. Is that real, or is that just another role you're playing?" The audience's discomfort was palpable now. Backstage, producers exchanged alarmed glances. This wasn't the script they had prepared, and Colbert was veering dangerously off course. "Excuse me?" Damon's voice had lost all pretense of lightheartedness. "Ben has been my friend for over 40 years. What exactly are you implying here?" "Oh, nothing, Colbert said, his smile not reaching his eyes. "It's just that in this business, so many relationships are for show, PR-driven, and you two have certainly milked that friendship for everything it's worth, haven't you?" The cameras captured Damon's face as it cycled through shock, hurt, and settling finally on barely contained anger. For a moment it seemed like he might simply get up and leave, but instead he leaned forward slightly. "You know what, Stephen? I've always respected you as a host and a comedian. I've been on this show numerous times, and it's always been a pleasure. But tonight, I don't know what's going on with you, but this isn't right." The audience erupted, in applause clearly siding with Damon. Colbert, seemingly unfazed, pressed on. "Oh, I'm sorry, did I hit a nerve? I thought we were just having a conversation. Isn't that what we do here? Or are you only comfortable with softball questions and adoration?" "There's a difference between tough questions and personal attacks," Damon replied, his voice steady despite his obvious anger. "You're not asking about my work, my film, or anything relevant. You're just being needlessly antagonistic." "Antagonistic?" Colbert repeated, his eyebrows raised in mock surprise. I'm just cutting through the Hollywood facade. Isn't that refreshing? Or would you prefer I fawn over you like everyone else does? A production assistant frantically signaled for a commercial break, but Colbert ignored the cue. The tension in the studio continued to build as the exchange grew increasingly hostile. You know what? Let's talk about your film history, Colbert continued, flipping through his cards with exaggerated movements. You've made some interesting choices over the years. Some might even say hypocritical choices. Hypocritical? Damon echoed, his patience visibly wearing thin. Well, you position yourself as this champion of social causes, right? Yet you've worked with some pretty questionable people over the years. Care to comment on that? The studio audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Even Colbert's band leader looked concerned, shooting questioning glances toward the producers who stood frozen in the wings. I think everyone in this industry has worked with people who later turned out to be problematic, Damon responded carefully. I can't claim perfect judgment, and I've learned and grown over time. But I've always tried to stand up for what I believe is right. How convenient, Colbert said with a smirk. The moral flexibility of the Hollywood elite. You know what I find fascinating? The way celebrities like yourself lecture ordinary Americans about how to live, while you fly private jets and own multiple mansions. The tension in the room was unbearable now. Members of the audience were exchanging uncomfortable glances, some even beginning to whisper among themselves. This wasn't the Colbert they knew, the witty, incisive political commentator. This was something else entirely, mean-spirited and deeply personal. Damon took a deep breath, clearly struggling to maintain his composure. Look, Stephen, I don't know what's going on tonight, but this isn't an interview anymore. It feels like an ambush. If you have some personal issue with me, maybe we should discuss it privately rather than putting on whatever this is. The audience applauded again, louder this time, clearly supportive of Damon's stance. An ambush? Colbert laughed, but there was something hollow in the sound. I'm just asking questions the audience wants answers to. Isn't that my job? From the back of the studio, someone called out, "No, it's not!" A smattering of agreement followed. As the cameras continued to roll, capturing every excruciating moment of the confrontation, the network executives were frantically calling the control room. The situation was spiraling, and millions of viewers were witnessing what could only be described as a public meltdown by one of television's most beloved hosts. And then, just as the tension reached its breaking point, Colbert leaned forward, his expression suddenly changing, and said something to Damon that the microphones didn't quite catch. But whatever it was, it caused the color to drain from the actor's face. For a moment Damon sat perfectly still, his jaw clenched so tightly that a muscle visibly twitched along his temple. The studio had fallen completely silent. Even the band had stopped their usual background fills, leaving nothing but the heavy weight of anticipation hanging in the air. You want to repeat that for the audience, Stephen? Damon finally said, his voice dangerously quiet. Colbert leaned back in his chair, a strange smile playing at his lips. I don't think that's necessary. No, please, Damon insisted, gesturing toward the audience. They came here for a show, right? So let's give them one. Tell everyone what you just said to me. The camera cut to Colbert, who maintained his smile, but whose eyes betrayed a flicker of something, perhaps the first recognition that he had crossed a line he couldn't easily step back from. All I said was that maybe your concern for water.org would be more convincing if you didn't waste so much of it on your massive estate in the middle of a drought. But hey, we all have our contradictions, don't we? The audience gasped collectively. Damon's charity work with water.org had been a passion project for years, focused on providing safe water and sanitation to communities in developing countries. To have it dismissed as hypocritical posturing was a direct attack on something deeply personal to him. Wow, Damon said, nodding slowly. You know, I've been doing press tours for decades now. I've dealt with tough interviews, uncomfortable questions, even hostile journalists. But I've never experienced anything like this, especially not from someone I considered a colleague and, frankly, a friend. Friend? Colbert scoffed. Is that what we are? Because friends tell each other the truth, Matt. And the truth is that Hollywood's performative activism is getting old. People are tired of being lectured by millionaires who live in bubbles. This isn't about Hollywood or activism, Damon shot back, his composure beginning to fracture. This is about basic human decency, which you seem to have abandoned tonight for reasons I can't begin to understand. The camera caught a production assistant frantically signaling for a commercial break again. But Colbert waved them off dismissively, determined to continue this train wreck in real time. Decency? Colbert repeated, his tone mocking. That's rich coming from you. Let's talk about your comments on diversity in filmmaking a few years back, or your defense of certain problematic directors. Should I go on? Damon took a deep breath, visibly struggling to remain calm. Everyone makes mistakes, Stephen. Everyone has moments they're not proud of. I've acknowledged mine publicly and tried to learn from them. But this? What you're doing right now? This isn't about holding anyone accountable. This is just cruelty. For its own sake. Several audience members called out in agreement with Damon, with one voice clearly audible. This isn't right, Stephen. For the first time, Colbert seemed to register the audience's reaction, glancing around the studio with a momentary look of surprise. But instead of de-escalating, he doubled down. "Oh, I'm sorry," he said, turning to address the audience directly. "Is this not entertaining enough for you? Would you prefer I stick to the script? Ask about how challenging the role was? How much fun they had on set? The same mindless drivel night after night?" The studio fell silent again, shocked by this direct confrontation. Even Colbert's longtime band leader exchanged worried glances with other crew members, clearly concerned about where this was heading. Damon seized the moment to stand up, adjusting his jacket. "I think we're done here." "Sit down," Colbert said, his tone suddenly sharp. "We still have 5 minutes left." "Not anymore, we don't," Damon replied, removing his microphone. But instead of simply walking off, he turned to face Colbert directly. "You know, I've always respected what you do. Your political commentary, your humor, the way you've navigated the complicated landscape of late-night television. But tonight, this isn't the Stephen Colbert who replaced Letterman. This isn't even the Stephen Colbert from the Colbert Report. I don't know who this is, but it's someone I have no interest in continuing a conversation with." The audience erupted in applause, many people rising to their feet. Colbert's expression darkened as he realized he was losing control, not just of his guest, but of his entire audience. "That's right, walk away," Colbert called after him. "That's what you celebrities do when faced with any real questioning. Run, back to your publicists and your handlers." Damon paused at the edge of the stage, turning back one last time. "No, Stephen. What I'm doing is refusing to participate in whatever breakdown you're having right now. There's a difference." With that, he disappeared backstage, leaving Colbert alone at his desk, facing an increasingly hostile audience. For a moment, the host seemed at a loss for words. Perhaps the first time in his career that his quick wit had abandoned him completely. "Well," he finally said, attempting to regain his composure, "I guess we'll go to commercial a bit early. Tonight." But before the cameras could cut away, a voice from backstage, clearly Damon's, carried through the studio. Though not intended for broadcast, the microphones picked it up clearly. "Someone needs to check on him. This isn't normal. Something's seriously wrong." The concern in Damon's voice was genuine, suggesting that despite the horrible exchange, he recognized that Colbert's behavior was so out of character that it might indicate a deeper issue. As the show finally cut to commercial, social media was already exploding with clips of the confrontation. Colbert meltdown began trending within minutes, alongside Team Damon and What Happened to Stephen. The court of public opinion was forming rapidly, and it wasn't looking good for the late-night host. Backstage, chaos ensued. Network executives were already on the phone demanding explanations. Producers huddled around Colbert, who sat alone in his dressing room, staring blankly at the wall. Outside, Damon was surrounded by Colbert's staff, all apologizing profusely for what had transpired. "Has he been like this all day?" Damon asked one of the longtime producers. "No," she replied, her voice hushed. "He was fine during rehearsal. I don't know what happened. He just changed when the cameras started rolling." As the commercial break ended, viewers who hadn't changed the channel in shock or disgust were greeted not by Colbert's return, but by his visibly shaken band leader, who announced that the remainder of the show would feature a musical performance, followed by a rerun segment from a previous episode. Meanwhile, in the green room, Matt Damon was on the phone with his publicist, who was already fielding dozens of calls from news outlets seeking comment on what was quickly becoming the most talked-about late-night incident in years. "No, I don't want to make a statement right now," Damon said firmly, pacing the small room. "Something's not right here. This isn't about me or some feud. I've known Steven for years. This isn't him." As Damon ended the call, there was a knock at the door. One of the show's executive producers entered, her face etched with concern and embarrassment. "Matt, I can't begin to apologize enough for what happened out there," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "We're as shocked as you are. This isn't the Steven we know." "What's going on with him?" Damon asked, genuine concern replacing his earlier anger. "Is he under some unusual pressure? Problems at home? Something with the network?" The producer hesitated, then closed the door behind her. "There have been incidents over the past week. Small things at first, snapping at staff, changing scripts, at the last minute, insisting on more confrontational questions. But nothing like what just happened out there." Before she could continue, another knock came at the door. To both their surprise, it was Colbert himself, without his suit, jacket tie loosened, looking utterly depleted. The confident, acerbic host from minutes earlier was gone, replaced by someone who appeared confused and deeply distressed. "Matt," he said quietly, "can I come in?" Damon exchanged glances with the producer, then nodded. The producer excused herself, leaving the two men alone. Colbert didn't sit down, instead standing awkwardly by the door as if unsure of his welcome, or planning a quick escape. "I don't even know where to begin," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "What I did out there, I can't explain it. It was like watching someone else use my body, my voice." Damon studied him carefully. "Are you okay, Steven? Because that wasn't just crossing a line. That was obliterating it." "I haven't been sleeping," Colbert admitted, running a hand through his hair. 3, maybe 4 hours a night for weeks now. The political climate, network pressure, ratings concerns. I've been taking something to help me focus, stay sharp. My doctor prescribed it, but I think I've been overusing it." "Medication?" Damon asked, pieces beginning to fall into place. "Combining it with too much caffeine, too little sleep," Colbert continued, finally sinking into a chair. "But that's no excuse. None at all. I've never done anything like that before. To any guest. The things I said to you—" He trailed off, shaking his head in evident self-disgust. Damon sat down across from him. "Look, we all have bad days, bad moments." "This wasn't a bad moment," Colbert interrupted. "This was a complete betrayal of everything I stand for professionally. The way I treated you out there." He looked up, meeting Damon's eyes directly for the first time. "I am so deeply sorry, Matt. Not just as a host to a guest, but as a person to another person. It was cruel and utterly unwarranted." The sincerity in his voice was undeniable. This was the real Stephen Colbert, the thoughtful, decent man who had earned the respect of audiences and peers alike over decades in the business. "I appreciate that," Damon said after a moment. "And I accept your apology. But Stephen, you need to get some help. Whether it's the medication, exhaustion, burnout, or something else, this isn't sustainable. I know, Colbert nodded, looking down at his hands. I've already called my wife. She's been telling me the same thing for weeks. I just didn't listen. He took a deep breath. I'm going to take some time off. Tonight was a wake-up call I couldn't ignore if I tried. Outside the green room, network executives were already in crisis management mode. The show's social media accounts had gone silent, comments were being monitored, and emergency meetings were being scheduled. But inside this room, something more important was happening. A genuine human connection replacing the artificial hostility that had played out on stage. For what it's worth, Damon said, I meant what I said out there. I've always respected your work, your voice. That's what made tonight so shocking. I've always respected you too, Colbert replied quietly. Your work, your advocacy. Everything I mocked tonight are things I actually admire. That's what makes this even worse. I didn't even believe what I was saying. A knock at the door interrupted them. It was Colbert's wife, who had been called by the producers and arrived quickly, concern evident on her face. I think that's my cue, Damon said, standing up. Take care of yourself, Stephen. I mean that. As Damon left the green room, he was immediately surrounded by the show's staff, all still in various states of shock and dismay. His own team had arrived as well, ready to whisk him away from the chaos. But instead of rushing toward the exit, Damon paused. I know everyone's expecting some kind of statement, he said to his publicist. So here it is. What happened tonight was unfortunate, but I believe it was an anomaly, not a reflection of who Stephen Colbert truly is. We all have moments where stress, exhaustion, or other factors cause us to behave in ways we later regret. I've had mine. Tonight, Stephen had his. That's all I'm going to say about it. News of Damon's gracious response spread quickly, somewhat tempering the public's reaction to the incident. While video clips continued to circulate online, the narrative began to shift from celebrity feud to something more nuanced, a conversation about pressure, mental health, and the human cost of our always-on entertainment culture. The following morning, the network released a brief statement announcing that The Late Show would feature guest hosts for the next 2 weeks, while Colbert took a previously unscheduled break to address health concerns. No further details were provided, respecting Colbert's privacy. 3 days after the incident, Damon appeared on another talk show to promote Arctic Horizon. Inevitably, the host gently raised the subject of what had happened on Colbert's show. I've spoken with Stephen, Damon said simply. He's doing what he needs to do right now, and I have nothing but support for him. What I don't support is turning a difficult moment into some kind of ongoing spectacle. We're all human. We all deserve the space to stumble, recover, and move forward. The audience's warm applause reflected a collective appreciation for Damon's compassion and perspective, qualities that stood in stark contrast to the ugliness they had witnessed days earlier. 2 weeks later, Colbert returned to his show. The audience greeted him with a standing ovation that seemed to take him by surprise. Visibly moved, he waited for the applause to die down before speaking. Thank you for that welcome, though I'm not sure I deserve it, he began, his voice steady, but humbled. Many of you saw or heard about what happened here with Matt Damon. It was, without question, the lowest moment of my professional career. He went on to explain, without specific details, that he had been dealing with exhaustion and medication issues that had affected his judgment and behavior. He made no excuses but did share that he had spent the past 2 weeks reassessing his priorities and getting the help he needed. Matt Damon showed me a level of grace I'm not sure I would have been capable of in his position, Colbert concluded. And it taught me something important, that how we treat each other in our worst moments says more about us than how we behave when everything's going well. At that exact moment, to everyone's surprise, Matt Damon himself walked onto the stage. The audience erupted in shocked applause as the two men embraced, in a genuine moment of reconciliation. "I thought you might need a friendly face for your first night back," Damon said as they sat down. What followed was not the standard celebrity interview, but a thoughtful conversation about pressure, public personas, and the importance of forgiveness, both of others and oneself. It was compelling television precisely because it was authentic, a rare glimpse of genuine humanity, breaking through the polished veneer of late-night entertainment. By the time the segment ended, social media was ablaze. Again, but this time with praise for both men. Second chances and real conversation trended worldwide, signaling an audience hungry for authenticity even more than conflict. In the weeks that followed, ratings for The Late Show actually improved, suggesting that viewers appreciated seeing a more vulnerable, honest side of a host they had followed for years. The confrontation that could have ended a career instead became a turning point, a reminder that in a culture often defined by division and judgment, understanding and forgiveness still hold tremendous power.